William Jennings Bryan, always the three full names, like a maniacal serial murderer, is now a small footnote in our nation's history. He's someone you've possibly heard of and know nothing about. He wanted to be a decisive leader, but he was never more than a well-spoken bridesmaid. He grew up in Illinois, became a lawyer, married, moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, then something of a boomtown, where a young, ambitious man could make a name, or three, for himself. He became a Democratic congressman, vehemently opposed to railroads, banks, insurance companies, imperialism, and trusts. In 1896, at the Democratic National Convention, he gave his rousing Cross of Gold speech, attacking the Eastern money interests. That was enough to earn him the nomination for president. He ran again in 1900 and again in 1908, but he lost each time. Out of politics, he earned his living by giving speeches, decrying the big combinations, supporting the increasingly popular notion of prohibition. Woodrow Wilson appointed him Secretary of State in 1913, but in 1915 he declined the position because he was a pacifist and it was clear that America was going to be involved in war. He spoke out against evolution and social Darwinism for that same reason. He felt certain that survival of the fittest theory led to a doctrine of might makes right, and that kind of thinking would inevitably lead humanity to war. His strong beliefs on the subject led to his involvement in 1925 in the famous Scopes trial in Tennessee. It is seen as a crucial forum on the theory of evolution, but it may have been a clever publicity stunt. Widely reported, that was where, according to one scribe, Clarence Darrow made a monkey out of Bryan on the stand, exposing him not as an expert, but rather an elderly windbag. He died in his sleep 5 days after the end of the trial. He is best remembered today as the template for the character Matthew Harrison Brady in the well-known and oft-produced play Inherit the Wind. He was also Frank Baum's model for the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. So he does live on, in a way. But none of that is why I'm interested in him. I'm interested in him because he is, I think, to a great extent, the creator of the modern populist and liberal Democratic Party. He advocated in splendid rhetorical fashion nothing less than the redistribution of wealth. He considered it necessary to the survival of the nation. At the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century, he said this: "The extremes of society are being driven further and further apart." For him, it was a crucial, possibly fatal divide. He was referring mainly to economics, the haves and the have-nots, labor and capital, the men behind the trusts, and the common man. He saw capital increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few. I have spoken of that here previously, as that divide has continued and become, if possible, even more extreme, and more of a social irritant. Evidence of this can be seen in the nature of the social conflict. It is no longer between labor and capital. It is between non-capital and non-labor, namely, the Wall Street hedge fund managers with their imaginary dollars, and the unemployed and illegal immigrants who are also, for the most part, unemployed. The modern Democratic Party has its strength and identity from its support, and that is a literal support, of those on the short end of that economic stick, the have-nots. If William Jennings Bryan were alive today in the resplendent glory of all three names, booming with full-throated oratory, he could well be, finally, our president. He would have the right message and the number of votes needed for election. In his lifetime, he got his ass kicked twice by McKinley, once by Taft, had to resign his post as Secretary of State, and was made to look like a buffoon by Clarence Darrow. Today appears to be a much more favorable environment for him. I don't know whether he was ahead of his time or whether the times have finally caught up with him, but I do think that William Jennings Bryan would be a big hit right now.